In the World Cup, we talk about the group of death. When you're in a group with Germany, Portugal, and Ghana, it's really tough to get out of that group. Today, I'm going to talk about the region of death in the 2023 NCAA tournament. And in contrast, I'll also talk about the region of eternal life. I'm going to skip the South and the East region as I expect Alabama and Houston as my co-favorites to survive. I can't say the same for the other one seeds. Let me explain. The committee did Kansas no favors. They put Kansas in the West region, and this is a really tough region in which seeds 2, 3, and 4 are all in the top 10 of my member numbers. I actually am running 2 different member models this year. It doesn't matter which one you look at. The seeds 2, 3, 4 are really stacked. Let's look at 2 of these teams. First, let's look at Gonzaga. They are the 3 seed, and this is a team that's really brilliant on offense. They are first in the nation in my adjusted points per possession. They have players like Drew Timme, who has always been an incredibly efficient post-up player for the entirety of his time at Gonzaga. They also have a player like Anton Watson, who is actually making a higher fraction of his 2-point field goal shots than Drew Timme. He's making 67% of his shots. I think Watson is one of the most underrated players in the entire country. The knock on Gonzaga is they're not that good on defense. In my adjusted points per possession, they rank 64th heading into the NCAA tournament. But still, this is a very dangerous Gonzaga team. The question is whether they can simply outscore anyone in their path to winning this region. I don't really know the answer to that question, but I do know that earlier this year, they beat Alabama by 10 points in a shootout. The other really interesting team in this region is Connecticut. They are the 4 seed. I find this team interesting because they were a 4.5-point favorite against Marquette. This was in the semifinal of the Big East Conference tournament. Connecticut ended up losing by 2. Before that game, Bracket Matrix had projected that both UConn and Marquette would be on the 3 line. After this game, Connecticut fell to a 4 seed. Marquette ended up winning the Big East tournament, and they are a 2 seed. I'll talk more about them later. The committee has been using analytics in recent years. That's why the seeding in general has gotten better. When I first started doing this, you would actually find a double-digit seed that had a greater than 1/2 probability of winning their first game in the round of 64. That rarely happens now, and I think that's the result of analytics. But this is a really simple example about how the committee is not looking at the markets. Connecticut was a 4.5-point favorite over Marquette. Now Connecticut is a 4 seed, Marquette is a 2 seed. I don't necessarily think this is a problem. I actually kind of like it this way because it will give us a chance to identify underrated teams by the seed, and one of those underrated teams is Connecticut. Connecticut is strong on both sides of their ball. Their best player is probably Adama Sanogo, a thick 6'9" post player. However, probably 2 of their other players are more likely to play in the NBA. Wing Jordan Hawkins is an incredible shooter, and Andre Jackson is an elite athlete on the wing. Connecticut is going to be a really difficult out if Kansas has to play them in the Sweet 16. In the last section, I talked about the West as the region of death. In contrast, we have to talk about the East as the region of eternal life. You can make the argument that there is not a single top 10 team in the nation in this entire region. Let's start with Purdue. This is a team that I thought was overrated when I first really started digging into college basketball in late February. And then they started to fall in my rankings, and I kind of forgot about them. However, then Purdue storms through the Big Ten Conference tournament, and they ended up getting a 1 seed. So after Selection Sunday, I felt like I had to address this team. First, let's talk about that Big Ten Conference tournament. In my numbers, Purdue is the top-ranked Big Ten team. However, in the conference tournament, Purdue did not have to play any of the next 6 highest rated teams. Not any of the next 6. They did play Ohio State in the semifinal, and you can argue that Ohio State was missing their top 2 players in that game. Purdue certainly did win the Big Ten title. It helped them get the 1 seed, but this is a team that I still think is very overrated. Purdue started the season outside of the top 25 in the preseason AP poll. It might seem a little strange that I'm still talking about a preseason AP poll in March. However, the preseason AP poll is actually a very strong predictor of tournament results. No one sports writer fills out the perfect ballot for that poll, but when you combine a number of these ballots, you get a very strong predictor of team strength. It harnesses the power of the wisdom of crowds. Purdue was outside that top 25 in the preseason AP poll, and I still think this is relevant. This is not one of the more talented teams in the nation. We have to respect Zach Edey, the 7'4" big. He has had a tremendous season, and he is just a load for any team to handle near the basket. However, I do have questions about the rest of this team. When you look at the member rankings that I trust the most, Purdue is 9th. They're not very far from falling out of the top 10, and I'm not sure how long Purdue will last in this tournament. The other team I want to address in the East region is Marquette. I already talked about them a little bit in the previous section about how they were a 4.5-point underdog to UConn in the Big East tournament. Tyler Kolek is their point guard. He's an amazing player. I really like watching him play, both in terms of putting the ball in the basket and dishing it to others. But again, I'm not really sure about the rest of the team. When you look at my most trusted numbers, Marquette ranks 15th. That's pretty low for a 2 seed. There are 4 other teams in this region that are higher than Marquette in my most trusted numbers. So that's the bad news for Marquette. There are 4 teams ranked higher in this region. The good news is that those 4 teams are all on the other side of the bracket. Still, it's not going to be an easy path for Marquette. If they win the round of 64 game, they're probably going to play Michigan State. My numbers right now would make them a 3-point favorite over Sparty. If they make it past that and the seeds hold, they would play Kansas State next. Kansas State is the 3 seed, and this is actually probably the most overseeded team in the entire tournament. In my most trusted rankings, they are 37th. They're actually behind Michigan State. So this is the frustrating thing about this region. I put together a cheat sheet for people who sign up for my email newsletter. When I do this, I take the higher ranked team in any matchup. And when you do this for the East region, you end up getting that Purdue should play Marquette in the regional final. They are the higher ranked teams in each of those matchups until they get to that point, and then Purdue would be the winner over Marquette to make it to the Final Four. I simply don't expect that to happen. I think both Purdue and Marquette are overrated. To finish up, let's look at the Final Four odds coming out of each of these regions. Houston is at plus 135 to make it out of the region and into the Final Four. That's pushing close to 50-50 odds. Alabama isn't that far behind. They are plus 150. I'm getting these numbers from FanDuel on Wednesday afternoon. But no one in the region of death or the region of eternal life can come close to those kinds of odds to get out of the region. In fact, no one is better than plus 300. So plus 300 is a break-even percentage of 25%. None of the teams in the region of death or the region of eternal life are going to have greater than a 1 in 4 chance to make it out. In the West, in the region of death, UCLA and Kansas are tied at plus 330. And the reason here is that because this is a really stacked region. I talked about Gonzaga and UConn. It's a really, really hard region. Purdue has the highest chance of coming out of the East, the region of eternal life, but the story is much different. Here, the odds are pretty low that any one team comes out of there because all the teams are pretty weak. Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. My name is Ed Feng, your host. This podcast is brought to you by the Power Ranks Sports Betting newsletter. This is a free service that strives to be 3 things. 1, valuable. 2, concise. 3, entertaining. Each Saturday, I send out a curated list of sports betting tips, analytics, and humor. In addition, my March Madness cheat sheet makes it drop dead easy for you to fill out your bracket. It is waiting for you right now if you sign up. To get this free service, go to thepowerrank.com. That is my site for data-driven sports betting tips. Once again, that's thepowerrank.com. Members of the Power Rank get access to my full bracket advice. However, the benefits of a membership don't stop once the tournament starts. I also post college basketball spread predictions for every game. This is a very important tool for your handicapping process. I will also be supplying NFL draft bets as we get into April as well. To learn more about becoming a member of the Power Rank, go to thepowerrank.net. That is a URL that'll take you to a place on my site where you can learn more about becoming a member. Once again, that's thepowerrank.net. Once again, my name is Ed Feng. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Enjoy the NCAA tournament, and I will talk to you again soon.